Thank you, An Bing, and thank you for everyone, all the organizers here, and thank you for spending your time here with us, everyone in the audience. First, a few words about myself. I was a boat person. I escaped from Vietnam in 1978. I arrived in Malaysia at the age of 20. I started all over again. I got my PhD in mechanical engineering from Virginia Tech. At the same time, I got my MS in electrical engineering from Johns Hopkins University. And I spent 15 years as a research scientist with the Navy, U.S. Navy. At the same time, I moonlighted as a nonprofit executive director, spending actually more time than my daytime work. Until 2001, I knew that this is my calling. It's most meaningful, and therefore I left my other work and joined BPSOS full-time. A little bit about BPSOS. We are a national organization. The name came about because back in the 1980s, we sent a ship out to sea in the South China Sea and the Thai Gulf, the Gulf of Thailand, to pick up the boat people. At the time, there was a lot of piracy attacks against the boat people. A lot of women got raped, murdered, and some of them got abducted and sent to the brothels in Thailand. So we didn't realize at the time that we were dealing with human trafficking, right? But actually, back then, that's when we started. We fought against human trafficking, against these pirates. And nowadays, we have grown into a national organization with 13 branch offices across the country. We deliver a lot of drug services to Vietnamese and non-Vietnamese as well, refugees and immigrants. And we also have an international operation in Malaysia on anti-trafficking and refugee protection. And later on, I would mention about the opportunities if you're interested in working with us here or overseas. So with that, let me start talking about human trafficking. This is one of our programs. We have multiple programs, but human trafficking is one of our key programs. And we started this program back in 1999 with a very big case. It ended up to be the largest human trafficking case ever prosecuted by the federal government. It involves 250 Vietnamese and about 30 Chinese workers in the American Samoa. It's very big. If you go do Google search, type American Samoa trafficking, you'll see our name listed everywhere, because that's still a landmark case of prosecution. So today I talk about modern day slavery. Yes, there's still slavery around us, and how we can make a difference. Some of the facts here. The UN estimates that 1 to 4 million people are trafficked around the world every year. And around 50,000, according to a rather conservative estimate, of these people were trafficked into the US each year. So that's a huge number there. And human trafficking is actually one of the oldest trade businesses in the world. And it ranks third in terms of income generated, only behind gun trafficking and drug trafficking. And in 2005, the International Labour Organization estimates that there were about 9.5 million of people victims of forced labor in Asia alone. That's a huge number. So these are slaves, modern-day slaves. We thought that slavery had ended long ago, a few hundred years ago, or right after the Civil War. That's not true. It now has expanded across the world. Actually, it's getting worse. Now, a very quick, brief overview of the definition of human trafficking. There are two types of trafficking. Actually, there are more than two types, two main types: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And according to that, the definition, there ought to be a few factors involved to qualify as trafficking. One is it ought to be a transnational crime. That is, you move people across the border. More recently, there's a movement to expand the definition to do away with that first factor, that is internal trafficking, domestically trafficked victims. But let's stick with this standard definition. So there ought to be movement across the border, national border, from one country to another country, and exploitation, either labor exploitation or commercial sex exploitation. So you need to have the second factor and the third factor. That is this coercion, some type of coercion so that the victim may not leave that exploitative condition. So that's key. Some people, they might be exploited, but they refuse to leave the condition. They want to stay there. Why? Who knows, right? Or if they are not blocked from running away. So if you don't have the third factor, that may not qualify the victim as victim of human trafficking. Yes, that's a victim of exploitation, but not of trafficking. So this is a standard definition here, two major types. And also recently, there's an additional category of trafficking, and that is the extraction of human organs. You get someone and take away the organs and sell the organs, and that happens a lot in China, but in some other countries as well. Now, labor trafficking. Today we talk about labor trafficking. A lot of people talk about sex trafficking because that's more easily identified than labor trafficking. And unfortunately, labor trafficking has been on the rise due to a number of economic factors, global economic factors. The major movement is like this. There are quite a number of countries like Taiwan, like Malaysia, quite a number of countries in the former Eastern Europe that have approached the status of developed country, and therefore the cost of production has increased. The cost of living, cost of production has increased. And in order to stay competitive, they have to import cheap labor from other countries into their countries. Otherwise, all the orders will go to other countries, right? So they cannot compete. That's why there's a global movement of export and import of labor. And that gives rise to more likelihood and risk of trafficking. So labor trafficking has been on the rise because of that movement, because of that trend. Second, some of our policies tend to favor certain numbers, certain of our allies, like Jordan, in the Middle East. And therefore, there's a trade agreement between the U.S. and Jordan that gives preferential treatment to Jordan. So all those companies that operate in the so-called qualifying industrial zones, QIZs, for instance, there are 5 such zones set up in Jordan, then the products there will not be taxed and there won't be any quota if imported into the U.S. What does that do? That attracts a lot of investors and, right, from other countries that come to Jordan and operate set up plants in those QIZs. And then there's also a movement of import of labor from other countries where the labor cost is the cheapest, like in Vietnam or Cambodia and India, a lot of other countries, China, to Jordan, the QIZs. So these QIZs now have become hotspots for trafficking. And we, the U.S. government, somehow encourages that, promotes that. And we are, because we're buying cheap products from those countries, produced from Jordan and QIZ. So somehow we also are connected. And I'll talk about a case study that relates directly to Georgetown University. And also now things are getting worse because the ongoing meltdown, global meltdown of the economy, the world economy. Why? Because many of these companies in those countries, like in Malaysia or in Jordan, there are fewer and fewer orders for products, and it's more competitive. So they're being driven even further to exploit the workers to stay competitive. And therefore, the situation is not getting better, it's getting worse. Vietnam is a major source of labor export. and therefore labor trafficking as well. Officially, on the official, from official statistics, 600,000 Vietnamese workers have already been exported to over 20 countries since 2001. The actual number could be twice or three times that many. And 80,000 additional workers are exported every year. And so that's huge. So the case study, it involves W&D Apparel, which is a subsidiary of Will and David Corp, based in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. So it's a Taiwanese company. And it operated in the Al Township Muat, QIZ, about half an hour away from Amman. That's the capital of Jordan. And it involved 261 Vietnamese workers sent from Vietnam to Jordan from late 2007 to early 2008. The primary customers of W&D are two American corporations, huge corporations. The first one is the Philadelphia-based Aramark. It has a annual budget of about $5 billion. And the other one is a smaller one, but still pretty well known. It's based in Houston. It's Academy Sports and Outdoors. If you go down to Houston or Louisiana, along the Gulf Coast, a lot of those outlets. And it has an annual budget of about $500 million. And Aramark supplies uniforms, catering service, food at the cafeteria, the main campus here, Georgetown main campus, and hotel and conference hall management services to almost 600 universities in the U.S., including Georgetown University. That's the link right there. And here's Amman. You see Jordan right there. And you can see here's the complex here. That's the QIZ. And W&D is part of the QIZ. And this academy here, based in Houston. We could even get the label on the uniforms here that they produce for academy. It says made in Jordan, QIZ, in parentheses. You can see that. And Aramark is based in Philadelphia. And again, it says here made in Jordan. So that is the link. And towards the end of my presentation, I will suggest a few actions that students and faculty of Georgetown University and especially Georgetown Law School may take to make a difference. There's still over 100 Vietnamese workers still stuck with W&D. We managed to rescue about 160 of them. They have repatriated to Vietnam. They are not out of the woods yet. They're still facing a lot of hardship in Vietnam and risks and danger in Vietnam. So let me show you a video. This is documentary. The great thing about this documentary, the special thing about this documentary is this. The video footage were taken by the victims themselves with their cell phones. Right? So we show them how to do that. So they documented everything. And you see the beating by the police. And not only the beating by the police, but the violence committed by the Vietnamese government officials sent over from Vietnam, supposedly to rescue them. But actually they tried to push them back to the traffickers. And they committed violence against the victims, their own people. And this documentary has been selected for screening at the Vietnamese International Film Festival in early May. No, I'm sorry. In early April in California. Yes. So in 2 weeks. So let me run this one. Can we turn off the light? Hello? Can we turn off the light, please? narrative is in Vietnamese, but there's subtitle in English.
Từ năm 2001 đến nay, Việt Nam đã chính thức gửi 600.000 công nhân đi lao động ở ngoại quốc. Mỗi năm có thêm 85 đến 100.000 công nhân đi tha hương cầu thực trong chính sách xóa đói giảm nghèo. Mục đích của chính sách này là tạo công ăn việc làm cho dân ở những thôn làng xa xôi nghèo khó. Nhưng trong thực tế, xuất khẩu lao động đã trở thành một kỹ nghệ buôn người, làm giàu cho những kẻ quyền thế trên mồ hôi và nước mắt của dân đen. Điển hình là tình cảnh của 176 nữ công nhân đi lao động ở Jordan. Từ các vùng quê, họ được đưa đến Jordan cuối năm 2007 để may mặc cho hãng W&D Apparel, tiếng Hoa là công ty Sơn Hoa, do ông James Shen, người Đài Loan, làm giám đốc.
Cuối năm ngoái, anh Thủy có về phường em nói là tự xưng là người của Bộ Lao động Thương binh và Xã hội lấy người đi xuất khẩu để xóa đói giảm nghèo.
Em đi ở công ty của ông Lưu Như Đường. Khi đi lúc em nộp tiền là cái giấy biên lai đóng tiền của em đấy là đi Đài Loan cơ. Thì em mới bảo là sao, em mới hỏi là tại sao lại đi Jordan mà sao lại lại đi Đài Loan. Thì ông đấy bảo là cái không vấn đề gì cả. Vay ngân hàng em phải mượn 3 cái sổ cơ. Một cái sổ là đứng tên mẹ chồng em, với một cái sổ là đứng tên mẹ đẻ em, với một cái sổ đứng tên nhà em là vay 30 triệu.
Khi đến Jordan, họ bị bắt làm việc quần quật 16 tiếng một ngày cho một đồng lương rất thấp. Có người chỉ lãnh 30 Mỹ Kim, trong khi hợp đồng hứa hẹn 250 Mỹ Kim một tháng cho 8 giờ làm việc mỗi ngày. Số thu nhập của họ không đủ trả lãi, tiền vay nợ ngân hàng để trả cho công ty môi giới.
Thời gian họ bắt làm ở nhà đi thì làm 8 tiếng, nhưng sang đấy họ bắt làm 15-16 tiếng.
Ông chủ không trả đúng lương cho chúng em nên là chúng em cũng định đình công và viết đơn cho ông chủ để giải quyết cho chúng em nhanh chóng, là chúng em đi làm, nhưng ông chủ không giải quyết theo đơn của chúng em và ông chủ đã thuê cảnh sát đến đánh chúng em.
Chồng nhảy đó, em mà chúng ta cho nên bị đánh. Em bị đánh nhưng mà cái thương của em là rất thương đồng chí của em cũng không vay mà những cái thương trong lòng của em bọn em.
Thế thì tự nhiên thì thấy mọi người kéo nhau đến, cảnh sát kéo đến và bảo là đi làm. Thì mọi người tất cả bảo là không đi làm. Thì bắt đầu nó mới vào nó đánh. Những người là nằm ở trên là nó bắt đầu nó túm tóc nó đập xuống đất trước, xong nó đập lên cái thành giường sắt bọn em này này. Thế là có chị Vang này, thì là Vang bị mất, rồi bọn em mới chạy vào, mọi người mới nói bảo là ôi chúng mày ơi, cảnh sát đấy là đánh chết người lôi đi, mà nó vẫn cứ túm tóc của Vang. Thế thì lúc đấy Vang ngất xỉu đi, thế nào chúng nó nhìn thấy nó sợ quá, bọn cảnh sát sợ quá, thế cảnh sát mới chạy ra ngoài. Cảnh sát lấy bình xịt mu mịt coi là cái xịt cái đấy thì bình cứu hỏa, nhưng mà nó là bằng cái bột gì em không biết. Nói chung bọn em bị sặc rất là nhiều, xịt vào mũi vào miếc nó mu mịt. Trong khi đó nó bắt Hà Thị Ngoãn ạ, thì nó bắt thằng Ngoãn để nó lôi đi nó bắt tóc đấy ạ, nó lôi đi nó kéo túm tóc, nó lôi sạch của Ngoãn đi. Thế thì em mới chạy ra, em mới đòi cái bọn phải trả người tao, ý là em vừa khóc vừa kêu như thế. Thế nhưng mà khi mà Vang bị mất rồi chúng nó sợ quá, chúng nó chạy ra ngoài, thì bọn em chạy ùa nó theo, rồi em đập một cái cửa kính anh ạ, đập cái cửa kính ở cái chỗ mà lối thoát để nhìn ra đường ạ. Bọn em để ý là cầu cứu ạ, nhưng mà cũng không ai đến cứu. Lúc khi đó lại toàn là cảnh sát đến thôi, cảnh sát đến tay ai cũng cầm gậy. Khi mà bọn em mà nhoi ra để chỉ cái thằng mà nó đánh bọn em ấy, thì là bọn cảnh sát lại giơ gậy lên vụt bọn em. Đấy, cảnh sát được sau người ta đến ấy ạ, rất nhiều cảnh sát đến nhưng mà lại không phải cảnh sát để bảo vệ công nhân Việt Nam bọn em, mà chỉ là cảnh sát để đứng về phía công ty thôi.
Họ đánh em và về hôm sau là em ốm mất 1 tuần và uống thuốc nên bây giờ đầu em vẫn choáng váng.
Ngay khi nhận được lời cầu cứu của các công nhân, Liên minh Cam Sa đã nhanh chóng can thiệp và đã nhận được sự hỗ trợ của Bộ Ngoại giao Hoa Kỳ và nhiều dân biểu Hoa Kỳ, cũng như một tổ chức quốc tế có hoạt động ở thủ đô Amman, Jordan. Ngày 27 tháng 2, phái đoàn của Bộ Lao động Jordan đến giải cứu cho số 176 nữ công nhân Việt và đã đưa các chị em bị trọng thương đi cấp cứu. Trong khi đó, phản ứng của chính phủ Việt Nam tạo ngạc nhiên không kém cho giới quan sát quốc tế. Đầu tháng 3, Bộ Ngoại giao Việt Nam cử ông Trần Việt Tú, Phó Tổng lãnh sự ở Cairo, Ai Cập, đến Jordan để phối hợp với phái đoàn liên ngành đến từ Việt Nam. Nhiệm vụ của họ là cô lập và trục xuất số công nhân bị tình nghi chủ động cuộc đình công, để rồi ép các công nhân còn lại quay về làm việc cho chính kẻ đã bóc lột và hành hung họ.
Ôi, em chả thấy giải quyết được cái gì cho chúng em, chỉ dọa đạp chúng em nhiều thôi. Nói chung là các ông đấy thì em chả biết tên ai lắm, nhưng mà thấy ông Trung với ông Việt hay ông gì, có nghĩa là họ chỉ nói về đứng về phía công ty, chả đứng về phía bên chị em bên Việt Nam mình một tí nào cả.
Bây giờ đề nghị anh Trung, đại diện của lao động, đọc danh sách ra đọc tên, và tôi đề nghị này, đọc tên ai người đó đứng lên đi ra cửa này để làm việc. Tôi đề nghị không nói tôi bây giờ là làm thủ tục để về nước, nên là đề nghị tôi gọi đến tên ai người đó đứng dậy.
Khi các công nhân phản đối thì họ bị phái đoàn lùng bắt.
Các chị khi về nước, tôi đề nghị các chị làm thủ tục để về nước. Bây giờ tôi để cho các chị gọi về. Khi làm được.
Các công nhân tìm đường tháo chạy trong sự hỗn loạn. Họ bị chặn tại cửa bởi nhân viên bảo vệ do phái đoàn thuê và đem đến. Trong cảnh nhốn nháo, một nhân viên phái đoàn tên là Phương chụp chị Trần Thị Ánh, bẻ quạt tay chị và nắm tóc kéo chị lôi đi. Trong cuộc bố giáp ngày 19 tháng 2 trước đây, chị Ánh từng bị cảnh sát Jordan đánh đến bất tỉnh và sau đó chị luôn bị mê sảng. Sau cuộc áp đảo của phái đoàn Việt Nam, chị bị mê sảng trở lại. Thất bại trong ý định đẩy công nhân trở lại với kẻ đã buôn bán họ, chính phủ và các công ty môi giới ém nhẹm sự vụ bằng cách triệt hạ uy tín.
Ông Đường đã gọi điện sang đây bảo là sang bên đây mấy người đình công là phải đi đánh đỉ toàn bộ công nhân ở đây, là đình công là bây giờ đánh đỉ, cho nên là danh dự của bọn em bây giờ bị bôi nhọ rồi. Thì bây giờ em cũng rất là lo, sợ về nhà bây giờ về mà nếu về như thế này, mình ở bên này bị đánh đập như thế mà bây giờ về mà thì em biết hỏi ai, với lại biết kêu chỗ nào. Được về em chán lắm rồi, ở đây em chán lắm rồi.
Liên minh Kamsa tiếp tục vận động. Nhiều vị dân biểu Hoa Kỳ đã lên tiếng trực tiếp với chính phủ Jordan. Dân biểu Christopher Smith đích thân nêu vấn đề với quốc vương và hoàng hậu Jordan. Cuối cùng, chính phủ Việt Nam nhượng bộ, chấp nhận cho các công nhân đình công hồi hương. Ngày 16 tháng 3, đợt công nhân đầu tiên lên đường. 15 ngày sau đó, cuộc hồi hương hoàn tất.
Em thấy rất vui mừng, nhưng mà bọn này nó lại bắt em ký với tờ giấy thì em nhất định không ký. Tờ giấy gì chị? Tờ giấy lừa. Tờ giấy bọn chủ này nó lừa chị em.
Mình bây giờ còn tiền lương đấy, một tiền lương mình không dùng mình cho nó. Hãy hiểu rằng
nhưng mà tiền lương nó có trả lại không?
Không trả lại đâu.
Trong niềm vui mừng về nước, một số công nhân đã bị cú sốc mạnh khi họ bị chặn ngay tại phi trường và đưa vào phòng cách ly làm việc với đại diện công ty môi giới và công an. Sau buổi làm việc kéo dài, họ đã có những dấu hiệu bị khủng hoảng nặng. Ngày 17 tháng 3, Ban Tư tưởng ra chỉ thị cho các cơ quan truyền thông trong nước tuyệt nhiên không được đăng tải tin tức về trường hợp 176 công nhân ở Jordan. Hiện nay các công nhân hồi hương đang đứng trước nguy cơ bị mất tài sản. gồm những căn nhà ọp ẹp của gia đình mà họ đã thế chấp cho ngân hàng để vay tiền trả cho môi giới. Liên minh Cam Sa đang tiếp tục tranh đấu để can thiệp cho những đồng bào xấu số này.
Em bị lừa, em bị người ta lừa đi nước ngoài về, người ta lừa hết nhà em rồi. Người ta lừa hết nhà em rồi. Bây giờ con em đeo nhóc, nhà em sắp đổ rồi. Các anh ơi, chị ơi, cứu em với. Cứu em với. Chị ơi, em chết mất. Ngày nào cũng người đến đòi nợ nhà em. Chồng em lúc nào cũng đánh đập em. Các anh chị ơi, cứu em với. Các con em ôm đau. Vì tài sản thì em không nổi 200.000 mà nợ nần thì em gấp mấy chục lần. Không có tiền trả nợ em chết mất. Có muốn chết mà không chết nổi. Còn các con em, các anh các chị ơi, các con em, cho các con em một tia hy vọng được đến trường. Các anh các chị ơi, từ lâu em không biết được tiếng cười là gì. Cứu em với. Cho các con em một nụ cười. Các anh các chị ơi, cho con em có tia hy vọng đến trường. Cho các con em. Cứu em với.
Thank you, anh Bình. So that is the case that somewhat is related to Georgetown University. There's still 105 workers still in Jordan being exploited. And this is a classic case of labor trafficking because it involves deception. There's a debt, servitude there, debt bondage, they cannot leave, a huge debt in Vietnam. That lady who returned home, she's now facing a huge debt that she can't even pay the interest on, let alone the debt itself. And fraud was involved. Many of them were signed up. They signed up to go to Malaysia or Brunei. They ended up in Jordan. They didn't know where they were. Confiscation of passports. They couldn't leave. Right? Exploitation, clearly. They were offered $220 for an 8-hour work plus overtime, but they got paid only $30 for a month for 15 to 16 hours a day. Violence against them, threats, captivity. The dormitory is within the confines of WND. Criminal syndicate involved, and government officials involved. You could see that, right? So instead of investigating the traffickers, many of the repatriated victims were investigated themselves by the police. So that is very strange. So at the airport, they were pulled in by the police, investigated, interrogated for 3 hours. And you saw the picture when they came out, they are totally dejected. So you just saw the video. It's also alive. And, oops. So we were able to rescue 176 victims in late February. How did we do that? As soon as we heard of this case in Jordan, we contacted the State Department, our own State Department, and they have an office to combat and monitor trafficking in persons, and they connected us with IOM, which is International Organization for Migration. It has an office in Amman, and IOM contacted the Jordanian Ministry of Labor, and they together brought in a team to rescue, and doctors as well, to rescue the workers. So these workers were beaten up. They suffered multiple injuries. Some of them became delirious for several days. They were denied access to medical care. So after they got rescued and visited by the doctors, 5 of them were sent to emergency care. Now you saw the video, and in here you could see that a lot of Vietnamese officials got involved, and also representatives of the labor export companies. These are the traffickers. So they're part of the government delegation sent to Jordan. And so that's very strange. Government officials hand in hand with the traffickers. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is how the trafficking syndicate works in Vietnam. In yellow, these are government agencies that are involved in sending workers overseas. The primary agents would be the MOLISA. MOLISA is the Ministry of Labor, War Invalids, and Social Affairs. And underneath it, there's an office in charge of overseas labor management. So that office is the key link in the anti-trafficking syndicates. And underneath that, there's the labor export companies. Many of them are state-owned. Others are jointly owned by private businessmen and the state. And it has multiple subsidiaries. Each of these has multiple subsidiaries, and they work through a system of unofficial brokers. These are almost like independent agents. They go deep into the remote areas, in the small villages, and recruit these poor peasants who didn't know much. Most of these workers that you saw that got beaten up, they never left the village. It was the first time ever on the plane or outside the village. So they recruit these most vulnerable, mainly women, to be sent off to the hotspots of trafficking in Jordan. And once they are sent over, say, to Jordan, they are delivered to their employers, sometimes directly, sometimes through outsourcing companies in those countries. And that's how it works. All these are meshed together. So it's extremely hard for these victims to fight against this system, because there's cover-up, there's hand-in-hand support for each other. It's so tough because the government supports and defends the traffickers and not the victims themselves. And now the victims. As I mentioned, 157 have repatriated. They're facing huge debt back in Vietnam, in their home country. Imminent foreclosure of homes and farmlands that had been mortgaged in order to secure loans, bank loans. These are loans from state banks in order to pay for their way out of Vietnam, to pay the service fees to these labor export companies. And some of them became victims of family violence because their husband blamed it on them for ruining the family, for causing huge debt to the family. That lady at the end of the film, she got beaten up almost daily by her husband. Every single time that the debtor comes by to demand payment, he beats up his wife badly. And there's still over 100 workers still left in Jordan. Now, how do we combat that? Syndicate. Intricate, complex, powerful syndicate. Our model is very simple. It's comprehensive in 2 ways. One is that we trace back all the way to the roots. So we start with, let's say, the case in Jordan. We build up the case. We don't just rescue them and send them home. We build up the case. We investigate. We interview the victims. We build the case so that we can target, first of all, the employer, W&D Apparel in this case. And then we don't stop there. We trace it back to the brokers in Vietnam, the labor export companies in Vietnam, their independent agents, and also all the way back to some government officials who are corrupt and part of the trafficking syndicate. And then, using those cases as ammunition, as evidence, we will work hard, and we have worked hard to change the laws in those countries, source countries and destination countries. Such as in Taiwan, they just passed this year their first anti-trafficking law with many, many progressive provisions in there, with one special provision that we requested. That is, under the new law, those Taiwanese citizens committing crimes of human trafficking overseas will also be prosecuted. We were thinking of WND apparel at the time. So now we have the legal framework to prosecute WND apparel. So we are working on multiple different fronts, but we always trace all the way to the roots and change the roots. That is the legal framework in each country. Because if you don't have the right framework and the right law enforcement, there's no way for us to fight human trafficking, especially labor trafficking. And at each stage, we use a comprehensive approach, a multi-component intervention approach from many different directions targeting the same target. For instance, for rescue, the victims, we establish local operations. Currently, we have an operation in Malaysia, soon in Taiwan, maybe in Thailand as well. That's where the crime happened. That's where the victims were. That's where we could get testimonies. We could collect evidence. And then we build up the case to target the employer. How? Through lawsuits, right, civil suits, criminal investigation. We put pressure on the Malaysian government, on the Jordanian government, on the Taiwanese government to investigate and prosecute. We expose them in the court of public opinion as well. And especially, we want to target their customers, the corporate customers, like Aramark. Because even though WND doesn't care much, because they are out there all the way in Jordan, but Aramark might care more if they hear from the students and the faculty and the public. And then we also start to go into Vietnam, the source country, and try to break down the syndicates. Through civil suits again, we are working with some of the returnees on some civil suits against the labor export companies. And hopefully, if the case ever sees the day in court, we could expose some of the corrupt government officials. Criminal prosecution, we tried that, it didn't work. Because the public police, instead of investigating the traffickers, they call in the victims and investigated them and threatened them and told them, drop the case. Not only your petition for criminal investigation, but also your civil suits. And there have been 2 victims, the leaders, who got into stage traffic accidents. One had been through twice, okay, and she had to be hospitalized. And that person was placed under a kind of detention, probation. She cannot leave her village, pending investigation by the police. So it's very strange for us to understand that system, but that's what happens in Vietnam. And again, public education. We are educating other people in the village through these returnees. Even though there's a gag order against any media coverage in Vietnam about this case, but these victims, they return to their village, they talk to their neighbors. So no one would fall victim again. And hopefully we could do so to target the economic interests of the labor export companies and expose them, not only inside Vietnam, but also the other companies outside Vietnam, foreign companies who might consider signing contracts with them for human resource supply. Right? So they stay away from these companies. Otherwise, they might end up themselves in court themselves. So that's how we are doing. We are going to set up and launch a website to rank these labor export companies in Vietnam, just like the Better Business Bureau. So hopefully we can put pressure on them to change for the better. And then influence government policies. There are also public opinion that we use, diplomatic pressure, regional and international initiatives. Just think, if Taiwan prosecute WND apparel and acknowledge that this is a trafficking case, it would be much harder for Vietnam to say, no, it's not trafficking, it's not labor trafficking. Right? So we are surrounding Vietnam with all these countries. Malaysia has already passed its anti-trafficking law. Thailand has already passed its anti-trafficking law. Now Taiwan. And also the threat of economic sanctions, because in the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of the U.S., passed in 2000, there's provision. Those countries, those governments that were involved in trafficking or condone serious forms of trafficking won't be sanctioned. So we could use that as well. As you can see, these are just a few examples of our multi-component approach to put maximum pressure, exert maximum pressure on the key links in that trafficking syndicate. This is organized crime with government involvement. So now what are the next steps? How do we apply that model to this case study in Jordan? First of all, we want to achieve the following objectives. For all victims, they must be paid all the back wages that were owed to them by WND and be compensated for all the damages, physical, emotional, psychological damages. And for those who have been repatriated, we want them to receive reintegration assistance, not only from the Vietnamese government, but also from the international community, because there are programs like that. But Vietnam has blocked them from access to those programs, because if they do allow them to access, then that's implicit recognition that there was trafficking. Debt elimination, because most of these loans were made by state banks, so the government can just eliminate the debt, cancel the debt. Why not? And we want the complaints against labor export companies be seriously considered by the government, and that the government will initiate investigations and, if necessary, prosecution. Over 100 victims still in Jordan. Their passports must be returned to them. They must be allowed reasonable work hours, fair wages, and if they want to stay and if they want to return home, they should be allowed to go home. As for WND, we want to exert more pressure on their customers, including Aramark, which I would like to mention that the Vietnamese Student Association has done very good work, and I'll explain that later on putting pressure on Aramark through the school administration here. And also on academy, sports and outdoors. We haven't found an angle to target them yet. And Taiwan, I mentioned about that, extraterritorial prosecution of WND for crimes committed outside of Taiwan. Vietnamese labor export companies and involved commercial officials should be exposed. That's what we have been doing. Even though there's a media ban on coverage, we use different alternative ways to do that, especially the internet. Civil suits, a suit has been entered into the court. The court hasn't decided to pick that case up yet. Probably they are under pressure from the government and the Communist Party not to take on that case. And criminal investigation, we lost, but we are not surrendering yet. We keep pushing. And the Vietnamese government, how can we move them? We asked the GTIP, that is the office at the State Department that monitors and combats human trafficking, to work directly with the Vietnamese government. They just sent a delegation to Vietnam last month to talk about this. And their annual report is coming up too. So hopefully that would create some pressure on the Vietnamese government. Now what you can do. Before I go into that, let's talk a little bit about the good work of the Vietnamese Student Association at Georgetown University. I did a presentation almost like this to them late last year, and they immediately contacted the school officials of Georgetown U and expressed their concern. And to the credit of this school, they pick up the phone, they call Aramark immediately, and they send out a letter, very strong-worded letter. And lo and behold, just last month, Aramark sent its own independent investigative team to Amman, Jordan, to talk to the workers themselves. And we requested that they not use the interpreters provided by the employer, actually provided by the traffickers, the labor export companies in Vietnam. And that is the lady that you saw in the picture, right here. This is she. The interpreter is right here. She's standing right there. Her name is Ha. And she was the one that led the police door to door into the dorms to beat up these workers. So we don't trust that interpreter at all. So to the credit of Aramark, they did hire a Vietnamese-speaking interpreter out of Los Angeles from a private company that specializes in supplier responsibility, which is good, right? So they came back, but we haven't heard from them about the findings yet. And we set up for the right workers to talk to them, who is daring enough, brave enough to tell all the truth. They just right before the arrival of that delegation, they were still put to work for 16 hours a day, from 7:30 in the morning until 11 or midnight at night. So when that delegation arrived from Aramark, they were allowed to work up until 7 o'clock only. Right? And they were paid full wages, but for only that month. So now they're back to where they were. Too bad, but at least we got Aramark to take some action for the first time after a full 12 months. So we need to keep on the pressure. How? First of all, continue to work through the school administration, and or you can contact the two companies directly as student bodies, as future lawyers, or as faculty, or concerned citizens. You can contact them immediately. And we have form petitions, form letters. You can write an op-ed for the school journal, for instance, expose this, to raise awareness among students. So if everyone's concerned about Aramark, and they now just signed a contract with Georgetown University for the food catering for the cafeteria. If everyone say, hey, do we want to eat this food provided by Aramark or not, then maybe Aramark would think twice and do something even more. Mobilize students at other colleges. Remember that Aramark caters to and provides service and products to almost 600 colleges across the country. So we can hit at their economic interest, their businesses, the bottom line. Get stories into the local news media. This is a great case here, great example here, to illustrate the travesty, the tragedy of modern day slavery. Yet it's out there, very far away, but very close to home. And there's also opportunities for law students to be our legal interns, or non-law students to be our interns, either at our headquarters in Northern Virginia or in Malaysia. We are thinking about Taiwan. Hopefully we'll have an operation by the end of this year in Taiwan as well. And by the way, we have 13 branch offices across the country. So if you're not a local here, you go back home for the summer, and you can look us up on our website. You can see whether there's a branch office of BPSOS or not. You may intern there and say in Houston. Then we can have you to work on academy, sports, and outdoors, and help us with fundraising as well, because it costs money to do all the work, as I described. Actually, we have very discreetly sent over $10,000 already to Vietnam to help those returnees, especially that lady that got beaten up by her husband. The only way to stop that kind of violence is to give her some money so that her husband will stop. And we told her husband, if you beat her, we are not going to send money to your family anymore. So at least we could stop it temporarily to give us time, to buy us time to find a more permanent solution for these people, and also for the entire problem of human trafficking, labor trafficking from Vietnam to other countries. By the way, this model applies not only to Vietnam but to other countries as well. So we tested this out, highly successful. So far, our operation in Malaysia has already assisted over 3,000 individuals in about 30 cases. And nowadays, every week, we got 2 new cases on the average. And late last year, we only started this model in April of last year. February of last year. And yet, in September, we were invited by the White House to present this to other international organizations working on human trafficking. So because it's highly competent and potent model, effective model. For more information, contributions, please contact us at that PO box, and I'll pass out my business card as well. So please feel free to contact us, or An Bing here knows exactly how to get in touch with me. And thank you very much. Now, let me ask Duc here to come up here to present, and we together will entertain your questions. And Duc is our advocacy coordinator. He just came to town from Colorado.
I'm here from Colorado. I just started, and part of my job deals with, if you look at the chart, the model to combat trafficking, basically I am part of the third box there to break down the syndicates. I help track the different companies and the different government officials, and then I work through Congress to put pressure on these organizations or government officials to look at things our way, I guess, and through the threats of sanctions and whatnot. I also spent some time on the Hill to discuss several different pieces of legislation that we support in terms of human trafficking and refugees. That's pretty much my job so far, and I've got a few other things that I'm working on as well, but that's mainly what I do. So if I'll be working on some of the Houston cases, the Houston case where there's a case we're working on where there is a trafficking case. They're actually importing them here and abusing them. So I'll be working on that case. So if you guys are interested in helping, let me know. But are there any questions you guys might have? Anyone?
I'm not sure this is a new, but the Taiwan law that was territorial jurisdiction aspect to it. What's the basis for the jurisdiction? Do the people of the prosecutor have to be Taiwan citizens, or what's the basis for getting jurisdiction?
On the traffickers.
I was asking if what's the basis for the jurisdiction on the new Taiwan law that was passed? It said there's extraterritorial jurisdiction, and I was just wondering what the basis is. It citizenship? How are they grasping jurisdiction of people in overseas?
Yes, Hello? It doesn't work. No. Yes, it has to be Taiwanese citizens.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, in under current law, Taiwanese law, those that committed heinous crimes could be prosecuted, even though the crimes are committed outside Taiwan. So we want to make it more specific to human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Under the Taiwan law, the other thing that they added that was important is that they added men to the category. Before they didn't consider men and boys as being part of the victims and trafficking victims. So that was another thing that we applauded them for. Anyone else?
When you engage Aramark, who do you speak to within the organization, and how do they handle these sort of social corporate responsibility issues?
Yes, I contacted Aramark in March of last year, and they have a person in charge of corporate responsibility. And he was very responsive. He contacted WND in Jordan immediately. However, soon when I called him back, he was already no longer with Aramark. So afterwards, there's no more response. Yes, until Georgetown University picked up the case and sent a very strong worded letter to the chairman. So yes, I think that students is the way to go through, going through the student body of the different universities that are doing business with Aramark. That's the right thing to do.
You mentioned that 105 workers are still in Jordan. Why is that the case? Were they a separate group that went after the 176 that were rescued, or I was just curious if you could speak more to the 105 who are still there.
Okay, very good question. Why 105? Well, before the police attack, the raid, the general manager of WND sent an ultimatum saying that if you don't get back to work, then you'll be attacked. So those 105, they decided to return to work because of that threat. And when the Vietnamese government came over, they only agreed to take these 156 home because they didn't return to work. So they argued that, hey, you agree to work, so you have to stay and work. So they lost that chance of being ever taken back to Vietnam. You see how the Vietnamese government works. You know, they try to find every way to keep them in Jordan.
How did you first find out about the group in Jordan? How did they self-identify? Because I know that the problem of identification of victims is one of the things that in the United States keeps prosecution from occurring. So if you could speak to that.
Well, ironically, I got news of this group from Vietnam. They contacted, desperate, they got beaten up. So they contacted a reporter in Vietnam. It's a reporter from the Tuổi Trẻ, that's youth magazine. It's by the Communist Youth magazine. It's very progressive magazine. So they ran a series of articles. So someone read that and forwarded that to me. So through that reporter, I made contact with these victims. And then later on, not because of this, but for other reasons too, the chief editor of that magazine got dismissed. A very well-known and well-respected reporter of that magazine got to prison because he exposed graft in government. And since then, that magazine hasn't done anything to touch on any hot potato issue at all. So they have become very lame and tame these days. But thanks to that first article, from Vietnam. So they didn't know, these workers didn't know that they are victims of human trafficking. They didn't know what it means. But as we work on the case, we learned that, yes, they truly qualify as a classic case of human trafficking, labor trafficking.
Did you say that you're working out of the Houston office on victims of human trafficking that are here in the States? Or did I misunderstand you?
There's a case going on in Houston where the company itself is in Houston, and they used a Vietnamese broker in Vietnam, and they sent the workers over here on H-2B visas, which I found strange because H-2B visas are used for specialized work. And if you can't find an American to do the job, then you can have that visa to come over here to do work, specialized work. And these were welders working in New Orleans. And they were paid. You're supposed to pay the prevailing wage, and they haven't been paying that. And so it's I think it's a borderline case. It can go either way, whether it's labor exploitation or human trafficking. It hasn't been decided yet. So I'm working on that case, looking at it. It looks like it actually looks like they signed two different contracts. It looks like they signed one contract saying one thing, and then another contract saying something totally different. So.
And that's an American company that did that?
It's a Vietnamese. I think a Vietnamese owns it. Vietnamese.
No, it's an American company. They was sent here from Vietnam to work on as welders. There's a lot of contractors for welding down in Texas and Louisiana because there's a lot of oil refineries and shipyards in that area. So yes, it's owned by an American company, but the brokers is a Vietnamese American based out of Harvey, Louisiana.
But if you get the unions involved, they'll fix that fast. But the welders union.
That's a good idea, but that brings up a very peculiar provision in that contract that they signed in Vietnam with the labor export company in Vietnam. The provision says that you may not participate in any activities such as labor union, joining any organization, or any religious activities, because those are considered as illegal activities.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And that was in the Vietnamese version of their contract. The English version didn't have any of that.
I'm sure it didn't. Thank you.
So, okay. Well, thank you so much all for coming. I hope that you learned a lot. I feel I did. And please feel free to take cookies and fruit and snack. And thanks so much. And let's give a round of applause for our speakers who've come to show us so much. Thank you so much for coming. And don't forget to sign the petitions and sign your name up for more information.
Yes, if
Thanks.
you want more information, if you want to be on our distribution list, please sign up and give us your email. If you want to be part of this effort, please sign up as well. Thank you.